I'm the host of Midpoint Monday. In a moment, we'll take your calls about a new Citizens Review Board that Tampa Mayor Bob Buckhorn announced on Friday. To keep an eye on the city's police department, our guest is a critic who is part of a movement that thinks an independent board is needed instead. We'd like to hear your thoughts. Here's how you can join the conversation. The number is 813-239-9663. You can email your question or comment to dj@wmnf.org. You can text us at 813-433-0885. And if you call now, you'll be the first on the air. Before we begin, we have a listener comment from last week's show. Our guest was Lawrence Lessig. He's a Harvard law professor who is considering a run for president. We talked about the problem of too much money in politics. Here's a listener suggestion about that. And also another topic that came up during that discussion, the confusing fact that gasoline prices at the pump are declining more slowly than the market price of oil by the barrel.
I met with all the
Comments?
Oh, my name is Doran from St. Petersburg. One regarding the price gasoline relative to the price of the barrel of oil. There's not a direct relationship between the price of oil and
we're probably not going to do the other three for a few more minutes.
And regarding the electoral process, very simply limit it 3 months of campaigning, limit the amount of funds that the candidates can raise independently, have the same limits for all candidates, and then have the advertising provided by the media as public service announcements, and we don't have to pay for our candidates on those terms. Thank you.
That's a listener comment from last week's show. Today we'll take your calls about a new Citizens Review Board that Tampa Mayor Bob Buckhorn announced on Friday to keep an eye on the city's police department. Our guest is a critic who's part of a movement that thinks an independent board is needed instead. Layla Abdelaziz is Legislative and Government Affairs Director at CAIR, Florida. That's the Council on American Islamic Relations. Welcome to WMNF Midpoint, Layla.
Thanks, Sean. Thanks for having me.
Well, let's first about why you think that there should be a citizens review of police in Tampa. What are some of the problems that residents are concerned about when it comes to Tampa police?
We're definitely hearing that communities of color and neighborhoods representing lower income folks in the city feel that they're over-policed. They think that when they have issues with police officers or the police department, they submit complaints, and these complaints aren't necessarily addressed. And I think that what we're seeing across the country is, we're learning that we can't trust police departments to police themselves. There needs to be oversight and accountability.
What kind of oversight is there presently? Before Mayor Buckhorn had this citizens review panel, was there a board that oversaw it?
No.
And this panel is modeled after the city of St. Petersburg's. How's that going? Do you know?
Well, there's many models throughout the country. There's civilian review boards in majority of Florida cities, including Naples, Orlando, Miami, St. Petersburg. And what we see is every community presents a board that meets the needs of the community. And so no two board looks exactly the same, but the St. Petersburg model is definitely one of the weaker models out there. And we, the community, the Coalition Tampa for Justice, coalition of organizations including CAIR Florida, ACLU of Florida, and many other community members, community leaders, have come together to study these review boards that exist throughout the country and throughout the state. And we really like the Miami model.
And that's not being considered by Tampa right now.
Well, I think that what we saw happen on Friday, it was an executive order that created a civilian review board that is not objective. The majority of the appointees would be appointed by the mayor, and it would be staffed by someone inside of the police department. So really what was presented on Friday is just more of the same. It's not an independent civilian review board that would have the authority and the objectivity to meet the needs of the community in terms of police oversight.
What does the Miami model look like that's different from that?
The Miami model is, well, there's a independent committee that appoints and solicits appointees for the Civilian Review Board. It has special counsel, it has resources to hire independent investigators, and it has subpoena power.
Let's go back a little bit. You were talking about the needs of the community aren't always being met by the police department, and one of the most recent big examples of that is the investigation by the Tampa Bay Times, the series that's called Biking While Black, and that's about how there were lots and lots of citations issued in Tampa, a lot of them in neighborhoods that are poor, and 80% of those citations went to black people How does that relate to the call now for a review panel?
I think this coalition coming together stems from that Tampa Bay Times report, right? What we saw was not only are Black residents of the city receiving 80% of the bike citations, but the City of Tampa Police Department issued more bike citations than the 4 major cities in the state combined. So I think this just goes back to broader policy questions of, is this the right thing to do to keep criminalizing poor communities? And what we see is the majority of our poor communities in our cities are people of color and Black residents. Is this the right way to approach these issues in the community? Is this the right way to make bikers safer and make drivers safer in the city? And communities of color feel like this is just another negative policy that, puts more police in their streets and makes them unfairly targeted by police officers.
I want to give out the number again so that if you'd like to join this conversation, you can give us a call. It's 813-239-9663. If you'd like to email us, dj@wmnf.org. You can text us at 813-433-0885. My name is Seán Kinane. You're listening to Midpoint. It's 12 minutes after 12 in the afternoon on 88.5 FM Tampa. And my guest is Layla Abdelaziz. She's Legislative and Government Affairs Director at CAIR Florida. Layla, why is CAIR involved in this concern?
Absolutely. So CAIR is primarily a civil rights and civil liberties organization. We're dedicated to not only addressing, rising concerns of Islamophobia in the public space, but also protecting all of Americans' civil rights and civil liberties. Majority of Muslim Americans in America are Black Muslim Americans, so I think that this directly impacts our communities. But Muslim Americans also are a community of color that feel like they are over-targeted by police departments, that they're profiled. We're seeing the same patterns in major cities across the country.
This Thursday, the Tampa City Council will take up this issue. Why are they taking it up now, and what could happen on Thursday?
Chairman Reddick wants to see a civilian review board that is objective and will meet the needs of the community. That's what it comes down to. So I think Chairman Reddick and other council members are prepared to address this and create a civilian review board that is not structured to fail, but structured to meet the needs of the community, to independently investigate complaints or policy issues or issues of the police department that come up in the future, so that we can foster trust between the police officers that police our streets and the communities that they're tasked to be policing, so that we can have healthier, more progressive policing policies that address violence and address any issues that police officers have to address. But we know that in order for a police department to properly police community, there needs to be trust, and that trust just is not there right now.
Well, Layla, we have a caller in blue. You're on the air. You're with the group Fight for 15. What's that, and how is it related to this issue, and what would you like to say, Blue?
We're trying to see the way that people have to get paid for what you the way, the hours and the right. In relation to this topic,
All right, thanks for that call, Blue. Response?
I think that what it comes down to is when you approach the establishment of a civilian review board, these are people in our community that would be appointed to review policies of the police department and volunteer their time. These are people that are dedicated to their community, to their neighborhood, and making the city of Tampa a better place. We don't want to ask them to do something for the sake of doing something. We want to structure the Civilian Review Board to be objective, to have the resources that it needs to do independent investigations of civilian complaints, and to make recommendations to the police chief and to the mayor about how we can improve police-community relations. And across the line, in order for a Civilian Review Board to be effective, there's decades of research on this, it needs to be independent, it needs to have subpoena power, and it needs to have resources to do those independent investigations. And what we're seeing with the model that was proposed on Friday is it simply does not meet the minimum requirements needed to fulfill the duties it would have to fulfill for the city.
Thank you for that call, Blue. We're going to move on to Bob in Tampa. Hi, Bob. You're on the air.
Prison.
Could you turn our mics down just a little bit? No, down a little bit.
Other groups to behave by the same standards that we want ourselves to behave by. The solution is separation. That is all this happens. China can have China, Japan can have the Japanese. Everybody has their own country, so all live happily separate.
Well, Bob, I don't think that you're going to get very much sympathy for racial segregation and separation from our listeners, but I guess we can hear people what they say about this. Layla?
Well, I think the beauty of our country is that people from all over the world, representing multiple ethnicities, races, religions, political perspectives, live together in the same community. And it's a struggle, right? It's a struggle to find that balance and to constantly challenge discrimination. We all walk the world with biases and discriminations that we hold, but ultimately the American narrative seeks to challenge those discriminatory biases that we all hold. And we know that there's some, that decades of police policies put down from the federal level to the state level to the local level have created issues of trust between police departments and communities of color. And these issues need to be addressed at the local level. I think a really great first start to that conversation is creating a Civilian Review Board that will help foster trust and will help bring accountability to the police department and accountability to the communities that are policed.
813-238-8001. We have Zeebulon on the air. What's on your mind, Zeebulon?
7 out of 11 of the members. I mean, that means
9 out of 11. 9 out of 11, not 7 out of 11.
Zeebulon, thanks for that call.
So I think that, you know, any institution is vulnerable to human nature, and any institution can be corrupted by human nature, which is why it's phenomenal that we live in a country that allows for checks and balances. Our police officers play a very important role in our society of maintaining safety and protecting those who are hurt by criminals. That's a reality. There are people out there that violate the law, that rob people, that hurt people, and our police officers risk their lives day to day to protect us. But at the same time, you know, I think it's a very fair point to ask for accountability and checks and balances of the police department, of these civilians that are granted the opportunity to enforce the law and carry guns and carry ammunition in wherever they go in our city. And I think it's very fair to ask for checks and balances and oversight of the police department. Now, a really phenomenal display of local democracy, I think, is the creation and establishment of this coalition, Tampa for Justice, that for weeks has been meeting and asking, how do we address this issue and what should our civilian review board look like? And the coalition has actually drafted a proposal that meets the needs of the community, and this has been a collective democratic process of hearing people's complaints and doing listening sessions. How are you impacted by the police department? How are you not impacted by police officers in your day-to-day life? And our proposal, I think, has a very fair ask for how the appointees and the members of the board would get there. It would allow the city council members to each appoint 2 members. It would allow the mayor to appoint 3 members, and it would create an independent commission that's tasked with reviewing these appointees. So I think that's a very fair way to make sure that the Civilian Review Board is representative of the city and of the neighborhoods that are subjected to more policing than other neighborhoods.
We have lots of people on the phone. I do want to get back to the phone calls, but I want to follow up on what you're saying right there and give the city's response to that. You're saying there should be an independent committee that's mostly controlled by the Tampa City Council. But in a letter to City Council, City Attorney Julia Mandel said it's the mayor, not City Council, that has the authority to oversee the behavior of police officers. She wrote, neither the Tampa City Charter nor general or special law would allow for the delegation of subpoena power to a Citizens Police Review Board, even when created by executive order of the mayor. In addition, she said council does not have the authority to delegate police review authority to a review committee or review board, which is created via ordinance. The only authority City Council has under the charter would be to undertake a review of a particular incident after all other formal investigations have been completed and to make recommendations to the City Council regarding said matter. So it almost sounds like in that letter, the city's attorney is telling City Council what Bob Buckhorn is giving you is what you're going to get. There's nothing else that could be done. How do you think that the community is going to take that, and how do you think City Council will take that on Thursday?
So the coalition and the community members have come to the realization that this is a gray area of the law. Now, the City of Tampa's City Council does have the authority to create a board with subpoena power. It is absolutely in the charter. What is in the question is whether, for example, in 1992, the City Council created the city's Human Rights Board, which has broad subpoena power. That is in our city charter as it stands. There's a lot of statutes and laws that need to be considered when making this decision specifically about the city council versus the mayor and who can do what. And I think it's important to understand what the legal answers are to those questions, but it's also important to know that it's a gray area, and in order to have a civilian review board that will properly function in our city, it comes down to having the political will to do it. And that political will needs to come across the board from the city council, from the mayor's office, from all city administrators. But our proposal and the way that it is drafted has been drafted by attorneys that think that it's entirely within the law and within the confines of the city council to establish a civilian review board with subpoena power.
Our guest is Layla Abdelaziz. She's from CAIR. She's also a part of the Tampa for Justice community group. And the number to call is 813-239-9663. You're listening to WMNF Tampa. This is Midpoint. I'm the host Monday. My name is Seán Kinane. You can also email your question or comment to dj@wmnf.org. You can text us to 813-433-0885. We got a text message from Joe in Dover, and he says, police corruption is not a new issue. They exhibit in the fact that police departments take care of their own. Some departments are so corrupt that honest police are afraid to stand up against the corruption due to fear of retaliation. He goes on from there, but it's similar to what Zeebulon was saying at the end of the last call, that there's this blue code, I think they call it, or thin blue line or something, where police kind of don't always call out when there's corruption.
I think that's human nature. I think that whether you navigate the nonprofit world or you navigate public spaces, you will find that people are more willing to forgive their friends, forgive their own, forgive those that they work with or that they live with or that they're friends with. And I think that that's why it's important to create a structure for checks and balances and to create a opportunity for the public to have oversight of the police department. Our city's police department receives 40% of the city's budget. It's very well funded, and that's intentional so that we can have the best police officers, the best talent out there. And I think that that's a great way to approach the police's budget, but then at the same time, there needs to be that accountability, and a civilian review board allows for that accountability.
DJ in Tampa, you're on the air. Do you have a question or a comment?